Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.
So it is that wonderful thing. It is a Six Nations week. It's all kicking off. We have Eddie O'Sullivan and Matt Williams with us this evening, gents. So something we won't spend too much time on, I don't think, but Joe Schmidt told the Sunday Reporters yesterday that Ireland most certainly had been the victim of spying. He said he was very disappointed with it. They had stumbled upon it and they just got on with things. So do either of you want to own up to spying in your day? Eddie, you can go first.
No. I go first, but I say no.
Matt?
I'll go second, no. Mate, I think it probably around the 2003 World Cup, I think there was a huge amount of it going on left, right and centre. I know it was. I thought it had stopped, to be honest with you. There's a lot of silliness was going on, guys. You know, people had to change training grounds. I know when I was in Australia, in Scotland, I think it was 2005, we'd tell them we're training somewhere, and because I knew the Sydney and Brisbane landscapes, I'd ring up a school that I knew, and we'd go and train at the school. You wouldn't tell them where you were training because there'd be people turning up looking at you for sure. I thought it had gone. I have no reason to doubt Joe. He wouldn't say it unless he was sending a message to one of the other teams that they were busted. But I know it did go on, but I'm a bit shocked that it's still there.
I'm not sure. It's. I think, in fairness, Josh made the point that it's not really important anymore because the video analysis now is so detailed, and there's so much information. Like, we've come so far in the last 15 years in terms of information for a coach. I mean, you can literally break a player's game down into minutiae, can blame a team's attack to defence. And the notion of having somebody up a tree with binoculars, like, you know, on a Friday afternoon trying to see something that might happen the next day sounds bizarre, you know. But there probably was a bit of it going on. I mean, yeah, it was going on, I think, in the 80s as well. But I think it's a pointless exercise now. You really just back the data you get from the opposition watching them play. Yeah. Everybody accepts that happens. But I think I can't imagine it's widespread at this point.
I presume, Eddie, when you were doing the captain's run in the opposition stadium, you were very wary about doing anything for the next game.
Well, we never did it in the opposition stadium. That was the thing. The only people that went to the opposition stadium the day of a game were the kickers. They could scout them if they wanted it. Okay. But we always went to a different venue. You just assumed that if you were there, you might get somebody be there watching you, and some of it might be innocuous. You know, somebody's there that works for the staff of the union, and they see something, and they might ring you up and say, "Oh yeah, did you see that 5-man line out?" You know, but I think it's pretty pointless exercise. You know, we used to never go. We just used to train in the morning anyway. The other thing was, you usually get a slot in the afternoon, like 3 or 4 o'clock, and it didn't suit because guys wanted to go to bed in the afternoons before a test game to get some, you know, rest. And you'd usually do your captain's run in the morning, and you didn't often get the time you wanted at the stadium. The only time I would ever go to the stadium would be if it was a new stadium, we hadn't played there before, and younger players might, you know, want to get the feel of the place. But even then, some of them used to just go with the kickers and kick the ball around just to get a sense of what it was like. But
right.
We never went and took our training slot. It was for the kickers, really. Okay,
I didn't realise that. Matt, for away days, captain runs, did you just assume you were being videotaped or watched in some respect?
You've sort of blindsided me here, Jay, but I do remember quite a funny story. We played, it was when I was with the Waratahs. It wasn't a national team, and we were in South Africa, and I will just say where it was. It was in Natal. And we found one of the staff had done a bit of a walk around, and up in a box there was a video camera playing down onto the field. And so we did a series of lineouts that we weren't going to play the next day because that's what they were after. And as Eddie said, you didn't show anything. You know, you went there, and that was very early days. I think it was only the second time we'd ever been to Africa. I think back in the 90s, and sure enough, they turned up with a line-out defence for all the line-outs that we'd done that night before, but we weren't actually using. So it was. I went up to I won't name the coach. He was a nice guy, and we had a good giggle afterwards. But
we made a similar experience.
It was just what was done. But Eddie's point is absolutely salient. Not every game was telecast. You didn't have these incredible analysis packages that you have now. You didn't have staff that were highly trained. You didn't have technology on computers to do the analysis. Like, it was just a different world. You know, in some stages there in the very early days, people were still using videotapes. You know, it wasn't on hard drives and things. So I do think it's an irrelevance, except maybe for a line out. But look, I think the shame of being caught, as we all found out, there was an allegation against the Wallabies which turned out to be incorrect, turned out to be a hoax, that someone was putting bugs in the New Zealand team room when they were in Sydney. I mean, it was hugely embarrassing and demeaning to the Wallabies, and as it proved, it was untrue. I think there's so much to lose by doing it now, and not a massive amount to gain. But I'm very surprised at it.
Okay. You wanted to come in there briefly, Eddie, before we move on?
Yeah. The irony of it all is that we... I remember first time I won in Murrayfield way back. We let a set of fake dino calls behind us at training that were old ones, right. And they disappeared. So I think Scotland were banking on the next day. So it was a very bad weather. It was snowed over or frozen, and we trained in a gym. And we left a set of old lino calls behind us in the gym intentionally on top of the bin, and we were back 2 hours later and they were gone. And they insisted they never were there. So we had a pretty good day at the line the following day. As I think, like Matt said, they were banking on one set and we went with another, but that was kind of reversing it, you know. But I think it doesn't make any sense in the modern game. I think it's something we're talking about, really. It's more of an entertainment.
I suspect Joe Schmidt knew what he was doing when he threw this one out there, and it was all the talk of the Sunday papers yesterday. So well, it's here. So France-Wales on Friday, 8 o'clock, and then Scotland-Italy is at Murrayfield at 2:15, and Ireland-England 4:45 on the Saturday. Rob Carney has emerged, Eddie, as the bigger talking point of the weekend's action. He was captain and played 59 minutes against Scarlets. He's only played 144 minutes of rugby since the All Blacks game November 17th, and missed a few tackles, 3 in total. The Dan Davies one on the touchline, which led to the try, certainly been highlighted with Jordan Larmour and others floating around in the background. So give us your interpretation of this situation then.
Well, if you're looking at it through the prism of what you think Joe Schmidt is factoring here, I think he'll start against England because Joe Schmidt values him very highly as a player, and rightly so. Like, he's the most successful full-back or the most decorated full-back in the history of Irish rugby, and we've had some very good full-backs in Irish rugby. But there is a risk here because if you go back over Rob's playing history, he's had some terrible time with injuries. His career's been broken up with injuries a lot, and he has struggled at times to find his feet. He's come back from an injury and he's taken time to find his form, and then probably got injured again. And I think last year in the Six Nations he was magnificent because he had a really good run of form into it. So I think he will pick him, but I think there is a little risk in it that he hasn't played a lot of rugby, and you saw that Friday night. I mean, in fairness to him, he called himself out on the missed tackles. He didn't try and hide from it, and you know, he's that kind of guy. He's upfront about it, but I think he'll feel a fair bit of pressure, and maybe there might be another little conversation before the game that was had in Chicago for the All Blacks game at Soldier Field. But I still think he'll go with him because I think this game, he'll need somebody at the back in this game that knows his way around and that has been there and has been under pressure. And I think for that reason he'll probably give him the nod. But I would say it's not risk-free doing that at the moment.
Matt?
Couldn't agree more with Eddie. I just think Robbie's been playing some wonderful rugby the last 12 months because I think he feels he's coming to the end of his career, and I think he's realising his days in the green jersey are numbered, and he's loving every one of them. I thought it was one of his best seasons last season. Also, I think the style of rugby that Joe is playing is not based on a counter-attack. He's not looking for his fullback to catch a ball and to put 3 or 4 passes together. Robbie's strength is his ability to catch the high ball and then to secure possession, and Ireland tend to then go off that possession. So his style of play suits what Joe is trying to put together. So I agree with Eddie that I think he'll go with him. I think he was always going to go. And the other part is, what's your alternative? Jordan is coming along nicely, but is not at that standard yet. I think he's got some positional problems in defence in particular. He's just out. He'll get there. He'll get better. He's improving. He's a great kid, and he's certainly not far behind. But I think he'll go with him, with Carney. But as we've just stated there, as Eddie said, because he hasn't played much rugby, there's some possibly some backfiring that could happen.
Okay. What are the other big selection issues then? Centre seems to be the other one people are discussing at this point, Eddie.
I don't think it's that complicated, to be honest, and maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but I would think, and again, historically, Joe tends to go with Robbie Henshaw and Gary Ringrose in the centre. There's sort of an argument for Bundy Aki, but I think why I would plumb for there's no question about 13. It's Gary Ringrose in my mind. He's playing fantastic rugby, but the 12 slot, I think Robbie Henshaw can do what Bundy Aki does. He can get you over the game. He's a big man. But Robbie's got, I think, that little extra football in him. You can use him as a playmaker. And then the fact that you have Johnny Sexton, Robbie Henshaw and Gary Ringrose playing together in Leinster. There's that kind of cohesiveness that you generally wouldn't get at international level, because the odds of having 3 players from the same club in the centre. So it all points to me, I think it's not a big discussion really. Right, okay. I mean, it doesn't mean, I'm not talking down Bundy Aki. I think he's made a fantastic contribution. But I think his best contribution might be off the bench, but he mightn't get the bench slot because he doesn't cover enough of positions. But yeah, so he might make the 23, but I can see the logic in the discussion, but I still think Henshaw's a better bet. Okay.
Matt, does it depend, in your opinion, is it those two locked in, or does it depend to some extent what England do as well? Because they have a few decisions to make now in the centre with Manu Tuilagi coming back.
To me, I'd be with Eddie 100%. It's a non-discussion for me. You look at the teams, and there are teams within the team. Your back row, your front row, your halves, your centres. These are combinations, and we use that term so often we forget it. And I just think Henshaw and Ringrose are the best combination for Ireland at the moment in that position. And again, Bundy Aki's he's played better than I thought he could, and he's continued to perform brilliantly. But it's a bit like the situation up until last week with the second rowers. You know, there were 4 second rowers that weren't going to fit into 3. Now 2 of them are injured, so there's a change. But I think with everyone fit, Bundy Aki's the unlucky player there.
What do you expect England to do in the centre, Eddie? Will it be all beef? Will it be Tuilagi and Teo and smash Ireland to pieces, or will Slade play there? How do you see that one going?
I think my expectation is that if you look at how Eddie Jones' hands are tied at the moment vis-a-vis the players available to him, his selection is going to be about physical attrition and physical confrontation. Like, the starting point for me is a selection. If you pick the best 15 players out of the two teams, I think England might get 2 on our team. They might get 2. They get probably, you could argue Billy Vunipola and you could argue Mario Itoje. But I don't see, like, you could argue, you know, if you were playing Farrell at 10, but that means leaving out Sexton, I wouldn't buy that. So really, we are a better team than them. They get very few players in our team. For that reason, Eddie's hands are tied with his back row. He doesn't have an open side. Sam Underhill was his get out of jail card on the open side. He's gone. So I think his centre partnership, again, he wants Farrell on the field, but he's used Farrell at 12 more than 10, even though Farrell is his best 10. But he doesn't have it. He doesn't have an outside centre. Then he bumps Tuilagi or Ben Teo to outside centre. So I think he might just go, like, if he's physically, he might go with Farrell, Tuilagi and Teo in the middle of the field, and just go like bats out of hell physically in attack and defence. I don't think he can beat us playing rugby. I think we're a better rugby team. And then the pack he has has got physicality written all over it. So I would think it's going to be a hugely physical game. And for that reason, I think he'll go route 1 rugby and try and basically beat us up. And it's possible, but I don't believe they have the horse. I think we can match them at that as well. So I think Eddie Jones has a lot of headaches coming into Dublin. And I don't see any obvious solutions to them. I think the back row is another one. The big question for us is, do we go, or does Joe decide to go with Josh van der Fleer over Sean O'Brien? And my inclination is to go with an open side because they don't have one. and that gives us an edge in the back row. But maybe if he's expecting a brawl, he might go with Sean O'Brien, because the English backer will be a brawl. They don't have an out-and-out Lucy. So they're all the kind of pressure points that I think Eddie Jones' hands are tied. I don't think he can outdo us in those areas. And even the line-out with Devin Toner in there now and James Ryan and O'Mahony, I think, our line-out is better than theirs per se, even though they have a Troje. And we got them cold 2 years ago in Dublin in that game. Peter O'Mahony stole that key line-out. So, look, I've been dicing this for a few days, obviously, and I'm just trying to find, if I was Eddie Jones, I would be feeling very uneasy about this one in terms of how do I break down Ireland, because I'm not sure he has the players to do it, and that's my honest opinion. It's a hard thing for maybe someone who supports England to take, but I think we're just a better rugby team at the moment.
Is that how you read it, Matt, then? Is Eddie Jones looking at this game and coming to the conclusion, I'm getting my biggest, most physical team on there because it's the only chance we have to beat this Irish side?
His problem is that, for me, when he lost Underhill, he must have sat there that night and gone, oh no, because when Underhill's performance against Leinster for Bath was exceptional, and it rattled Leinster. They couldn't get their game going. They did win the game, but they couldn't get into top gear. And he must have seen the way that if I can rattle Leinster, maybe I can rattle Ireland. And when he has lost that, you then got to say, well, how else am I going to rattle them? Where am I going to attack them? So he's got to get the game line, and he must have watched New Zealand and Ireland. Obviously he did, and New Zealand couldn't get the game line. New Zealand forwards couldn't get the team on the front foot. So again, he comes back to Eddie's question, where do I turn here? What do I do? So have you got someone that's silky and sparkly, that's going to twinkle toes their way through like Ringrose can? He hasn't got it. So the only thing he's got some big, tough, hard dudes. And he has said it in his press conferences, as much as I don't believe a word Eddie says in his press conferences, but he talked about, the brutality and the physicality, is it going to be like that? And that's, to me, what card has he got to play? And that's the card he's got to play. He has got some very big, some very physical guys, and he is going to try and choke a game to get the game line, to get the 3 points, and somehow to stop Ireland scoring tries. Like New Zealand did, they only scored one try, but Ireland have been scoring some tries last year. They can have dry patches. That's going to be his modus operandi. So I think rather than an open, free-flowing game, we're going to have a pretty dramatic, tense, but very physical game.
Ironically, given what you've outlined there as a fairly agricultural and simplistic style of rugby, John Mitchell, their defence coach now, has just been speaking on 5 Live from the training camp in Portugal, and he was asked how Ireland are going to try and beat England, and he said, they'll try and bore the shit out of us, was his response. That's hot off the presses. Bore the shit out of us, lads. That's what they're going to try and do. John Mitchell.
Well, he's a Kiwi, basically. He's done a little bit of travel, Johnny. But he lived in Australia and so he's a Kiwi, so he's called a spade a spade. He's look, it's. I've said it before. I'll say it again. It's boring rugby, but it's successful. And you know what? I've got to give Joe so much credit for this. Everyone copies New Zealand attacking style. Their system where they're putting their flankers out in the 5 metre line, and then you have the tight 5 in the middle. Everyone around the world is copying it. Leinster and Ireland don't. They're doing their own style. And if you watch Leinster play that first half against Toulouse, it's the same thing. They just got the ball, put it up their jumper, and just Toulouse didn't have any possession. They just couldn't get the ball. And that's what Ireland do to teams. They get the ball, Joe's team will get the ball, and just won't give it back to you. And it's not pretty. It's not sort of, wow, how scintillating is that? But, mate, is it effective? It is really, really effective and successful. And, I probably wouldn't say the same thing in the same way that John did. I actually said it was boring once, and I got slammed by everyone in Ireland.
Well, no, it was about 30 seconds after they'd won the Six Nations against Scotland, to be fair.
No, it was against Wales.
Wales,
I played brilliantly against England. It was against Wales.
It may not have been the perfect moment, but...
it probably wasn't.
But the point stands, and you've stood by it. Ironically, Eddie, you look at the possession stats. So Ireland lead the way in the Six Nations last year. They held onto the ball for 23 minutes, 15 seconds. And Mitchell expands on that. You know, they'll hang onto the ball forever. They'll wait for a mistake. So Ireland are averaging 23 minutes, 15 seconds of possession a game. Like, England are next in line with 22 minutes. It's not a gulf either, you know.
No, it's not a gulf. No.
Is Irish rugby, do you suspect, dismissed as quite boring?
Well, I think the boring quip is to do with the fact that Ireland, and Matt pointed it out, is we hold on to the ball ridiculously long periods of time. You know, we can hold on to the ball for 20 or 30 phases if needs be. And sometimes for 5 or 6 of those phases we're going nowhere, but we're just taking it up. And our ball retention, our breakdown work is superb. It's very hard to get the ball off us. That's boring, maybe. It's not so boring if you're having to make all those tackles, by the way. So I think that's the problem England will have, is can they make enough tackles to stop Ireland getting over the goal line and not give away penalties. So there's two ways to go after Ireland that might give them some dividends. One is their exit strategy with the ball has got to be, they've got to keep Ireland out of their half, because Ireland don't run from deep that much. They don't take massive risks in their own half. They usually use contestables, even against long kicks. So if you can get Ireland to try to build from inside their own half, and very aggressively hold the gain line, and then be patient. Like, there's no point in making, defending 10 or 15 rucks and then giving away a stupid penalty by falling on the wrong side. And that's why a lot of Ireland's scores or field position come from the fact they're holding onto the ball, they're pounding you, and then somebody goes off his feet at the ruck or goes on the wrong side or does something silly, and penalty, and then they ping it down to 22, and now you don't get out. They choke you alive in the 22 and they get a score. Yeah. And a lot of the problems for teams starts a lack of discipline, or giving Ireland possession in their half, and in the Ireland or in the opposition half. They don't leave without something usually. So they've got to find a way of finding grass in the backfield and forcing Ireland to kick out of their half and then hold on to it. To play Ireland at their own game. And Leinster, Matt is right. Leinster are the same. Like, if you think back to the game that. And I keep thinking this game is like Connacht blew the game up on the RDS against Leinster. And I happened to be talking to Jimmy Duffy a few weeks after, and he said, that they were screaming in the coach's box, not to kick the ball to Leinster and let them come back at them. They put the ball in the stand, make Leinster win a line out, like slow the game down, and they do need to break Ireland's tempo. So I think England's exit strategy has to be really strong, make Ireland play out of their own half, which they don't like doing, and be very aggressive at the point of contact, and be very disciplined also, that you don't give Ireland an easy entry point or beachhead in your half, because they generally don't leave without something on the board.
On the breakdown point, so Ireland are averaging maybe 130, 140 rucks a game, Matt, and you mentioned the loss of Underhill there, and he's hugely important, and we've seen Eddie dream up some interesting ideas about how to go about business at the breakdown last year, and it really came a cropper in Murrayfield. How will he handle that then? If that's the key to Irish success, their efficiency at the breakdown across 130, 140 rucks per game, that you just can't seem to get the ball off them. What is the best way, do you think, for this English side to counter that? Do they go in at the breakdown, or do they leave it to Ireland and just worry about making tackle after tackle?
Eddie Jones is a workaholic. Like he really literally works 20 hours a day. He's quite extraordinary. He's pushed himself into illness. He's had a slight stroke a couple of years ago because he just does. We use that term workaholic but that's what he does. Now I know Eddie. He will look at all of Ireland's recent games and who had relative success against Ireland. And he'll pick up, and it's exactly on Eddie O'Sullivan's point that he just made. Australia had great tactics against Ireland. They kicked long, they didn't kick for touch, and they got Ireland in their half with the ball. And that put Ireland under pressure. But Australia did exactly what Eddie just said. They had terrible discipline. They gave away, I think, in those 3 games, 23 penalties in 2 games, I think the last 2 games, and that allowed Ireland to kick down. So he'll take one part of that. He'll kick long. He'll do that. He'll also know Ireland like to base their attack off a set play. They love scrums. you think they scored the try from the line out, they scored a try from scrums, they love their set plays. So he'll try and deny them those set plays. The second part they'll do is they will commit no one to that ruck. They'll make a tackle. They'll do what New Zealand did, which was pretty effective, except for that one try off the line out. New Zealand had great line speed, bashed them low, got them to ground, let Ireland put 3 or 4 in to protect the ball. Don't put anyone else in, and just keep doing it and keep doing it. The trouble with that scenario is you've got to do it for 120, 150, 160 tackles a game and not give away the penalties, and that's very, very hard to do. Very hard to do because you don't have a 7 in there that's contesting. Your centres are not really people that contest for the ball. You've got 1 or 2. Toje in particular is brilliant at it, but not a lot of the other guys in that English side are great turnover merchants. So again, it comes us back to that point. You're going to have a physicality. Line speed and physicality will be your number one go-to, and playing the game in Ireland's half.
Sorry, Eddie, go on.
To follow on Matt's point there is that there's a double-edged sword about not contesting at the ruck, and the not contesting means the ball is available very quickly.
Yeah.
And if the ball is available quickly, it's very hard to set your line and bring that aggressive defence to win the collision on, or at least if not their side of the game line, on your side of the game line. So that's the conundrum, the trade-off. Don't contest the ruck, but how do you slow it down? Because that ruck could be a 1-second ruck and you can't get off the line. And if you do contest it, when do you contest it? Like, you can't go after every ruck. And then if you, as Matt said, if you do contest it, you cannot give away a penalty. That's a gift from heaven. So it's a tricky one to balance. And I think my expectation is that England will be extremely aggressive in the tackle, try and win the collision, and get people on their feet and get off the line again. But that's hard work. It's hard work when you go through the number of rucks Ireland prepared to go through.
It's something Leo Cullen said about Bath, not to underplay what Underhill did, but they won the collisions as well in the tackle, and he beefed up that Leinster midfield for the return leg. So maybe that's something England will try and do as well. We're streaming on Facebook and YouTube and Periscope. Various comments coming in. You can win the Heineken Star comment at the end of the week. John Walsh reckons Henshaw will start at 15. Remains to be seen. Fairly clear, Eddie's cut this up in various ways and can only see an Irish victory, it seems, Matt. Before we move on to the other games with the Vunipolas back and Tuilagi, even all that English heft doesn't have you too worried?
Oh no, it has me worried for sure. I think, Eddie Jones at their training camps has been working a lot on wrestling. They've had a few injuries at training camps and the clubs have blown up a bit about it, the English clubs. But he's also worked on their fitness and their wrestle. Now, rugby league, every club in Australia in rugby league has a wrestle coach. And he's brought that in to do exactly what Eddie O'Sullivan just said, that one man in that tackle is going to try and make it an absolute dockyard brawl, not to necessarily win the ball, and that'd be a great bonus, and of course they'll try it, but to buy time.
Okay.
And this England side last year, this is a much better England side than the England side last year. I think they're going to come, they've been humiliated at Twickenham last year, and they're coming here with revenge in mind, for sure. And I think it's going to be a very, very close game. Ireland are a better team, and I think it's an excellent, their mindset is excellent. There's nothing about this Irish side where you're going to say, they're bragging, they lost their way, they're in front of themselves. They're not. They're very level-headed. They're on the ground. They're hungry. You can see the way the clubs have performed. They're hungry. I think it's going to be a great game, but I certainly believe Ireland will win.
Okay. France-Wales kicked it all off on the Friday night, which is a great way to kick things off. Friday Night Lights. The Welsh fitness news was good today. Ross Moriarty's been past fit. Liam Williams is back as well. Gareth Davies as well. Dan Biggar too. In some respects, this is Gatland's last Six Nations as well, obviously. The tournament shapes up rather nicely for them. They come in good shape, second in the Six Nations last year. A good November. They beat Australia for the first time in a decade. They beat South Africa, and if they can get over, and that is the if they can get over France, then the rest of the tournament does open up nicely for them. We've made that point. Italy the following week, then a gap week, then England at home, then a gap week, and then Scotland, and which obviously will be tricky, and Ireland at home. So getting over that first hurdle, suddenly the whole thing does open out quite nicely for them. It was a point Gatland made last week. So your thoughts on Wales, Matt? And then with France as well, if I can throw a double question at you, if you can remember, the clock's against us. I was looking from their squad last year. So of the team that played Wales in the last game last year, 8 of those starters are gone. And then another 6 of the squad members, so 14 of the 31 gone. Is this young French talent coming through, or are they in a bit of disarray? So Wales and France for us.
I think France are a hugely improved side from where they were last year. You know, they had all the diabolical actions they did up at Murrayfield after the games. They blew 3 games, I would suggest to you, with just outrageously poor discipline. They should have beaten Ireland and should have beaten Scotland and should have beaten Wales, without doubt. And they didn't. They lost those games through ill discipline. And up until they played Fiji the other week, I would have said in November rather, they made huge progress. They played really well in New Zealand, and the scores didn't reflect how well they played, because New Zealand will run in 3 or 4 tries in that last 10 minutes, and the scores blow out. In one game there was a red card. I really hope, for the good of the tournament, I want France to do well, because we need France to be strong. I think this team has turned around. I don't think they're not in any way a great French side compared to the teams they were putting out 10, 20 years ago, but they're going to be competent. Now, I think this is a very, very big night. It's going to be a very hard night to pick, because it's a very good Welsh side. Forget the Welsh provinces, what they've done. The Wales can assemble 23 to 25 really good players, and they will, and they'll be a handful. I think it's going to be a really good game. Whoever wins it will get a springboard going forward, and if Wales do, they've got a really good shot to win a tournament. I don't think they'll win a Grand Slam, but to win the tournament, they're not going to be easy to throw over. But France, if they can get through this first game, where they didn't last year, they lost games by a whisker last year. If they get through this first one, they're going to be a really difficult team to play against coming through. I think it's a really fascinating night's rugby.
Yeah. Eddie, what's your sense of those two?
Yeah, I think it's a huge game for Wales on the basis that I think if they know if they can win in Paris, they will be fancying their chances with Ireland and England in Cardiff. Certainly Ireland, the last game, they will see Grand Slam territory in front of them. I'm still like, it's the old cliche about France. We don't know. We really don't know. I mean, they did blow games last year by lack of discipline. They tend to have these sweeping changes. Then, like, they keep putting their eggs in the youth basket. But like, it's a few months out of a World Cup, and how do you have such a big turnover in your squad in that time? Yeah. I think they have issues with who's out half. For them, they've lots of stuff. You don't know where they're going. I'm not sure they know where they're going.
And who is out half? Like this time last year, they were throwing in. Was it Anthony Bellew, the Toulon out half? He was thrown into that Ireland game and got injured early on. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah, now he was playing well in that game. I mean, had he stayed on, it might have been a different result. Yeah. But they tend to go back to Trin Duck, who's guaranteed going to screw things up at some point. Like he did it in Munster last year. I predicted he'd come off the fence. I came off the bench and said that's Munster will get a break here, and certainly Conway was under the sticks. Yeah. But like, I think France, we know on a day France can get you. I'm not saying they can't get Wales or even Ireland. On a day they can get you, but they can't get everybody over 5 days. They're not able to do it. They haven't been able to do it for years. Like, they've been swanning around the bottom half of the Six Nations for the best part of 10 years now, and there's no end in sight. So I think Wales, on the other hand, see, look, this is it, lads. We go to Paris and we beat France in Paris on Friday night, and the Grand Slam is on. Like, they'll back themselves away against Scotland, and they'll certainly back themselves at home against England and Ireland. So I think it's a pivotal game for Wales, and for that reason, I think Wales will get it done. I just have a good feeling. If they don't, then I know the different type of pressure comes on them. But certainly Wales respond to those sort of opportunities. We've seen them over the years. When they get a sniff of a Grand Slam, they rarely leave it behind them.
The thought of a Grand Slam decider March 16th in Cardiff would be quite something. And then on Saturday we'll kick things off at Murrayfield. So Scotland are there for the opening 2 weeks. Obviously Ireland to come in week 2. I was reading over the weekend a few pieces. Sergio Parise, he's now played 134 tests, and it must be the worst stat of all, but he has lost 100 of them. He's lost more test matches than most people have played in. And he's going to match O'Driscoll's record, 66 Six Nations matches, when he takes the field against Murrayfield. And in fact, he'll overtake O'Driscoll. against Italy, and he's on 1-3-4 caps with Richie McCaw's 1-4-8, very much in touching distance. So we'll be keeping an eye on how he's going at 35 years of age now. On Scotland, Matt, obviously we've seen where Glasgow and Edinburgh are in the Heineken Champions Cup. They lost to Wales, and the Wales game was a curious one, but they lost to South Africa as well in November, and they were built up as the big dark horses. They were the most talked about dark horses last year, and then started abysmally against Wales, that 34-7 defeat Cardiff, recovered to a point. So I'm wary of getting too excited about Scotland again as the dark horses.
Yeah, I don't think we should until they perform. They have certainly made progress. You can see their players at club level having made progress. You know, I think they talk it up a bit too much because everyone in Scotland is just so desperate for something positive to talk about with their rugby. And obviously their club's making the playoffs of the Heineken Cup is tremendous. But they're desperate for something to happen with the national side. And, you know, they have really, you know, they've deceived, really. They've deceived. They haven't finished well. Even when they came to the Aviva last year, they butchered 3 tries and threw an intercept try for Ireland. So there was 4 tries missing. Now you can't be that inexact on a rugby field. You can't be that inexact.
Yeah, Schmidt made the point at the Six Nations launch last week that people have maybe overlooked the extent to which Scotland really caused Ireland trouble, but just didn't take advantage of it.
Yeah, well, they did, and that's what I mean. They could have won that game quite easily. Yeah. As I said, I think they had a 2 or 3 on 1 for a try 3 times and blew it. And one of those was the intercept. If the pass that was intercepted by Jacob Stockdale, had that gone to hand, Ireland were in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
But you know, but they didn't. You know, if I was another foot taller and 20 stone, I'd be a second rower, but I'm not. So you just got to deal with what they've done. But they've done that consistently. Doesn't mean they haven't got talent. Finn Russell has played some really good rugby over in France. They can, and they're playing Italy now. Look, you know, Sergio Parisse was a great player. He's no longer a great player. I have a great respect for the guy. He's been a wonderful player, but he's a shadow of his former self. He shouldn't be playing international rugby. It's only because Italy are so weak, and I don't take any joy in saying that. Italy's defence at international level, I'm talking about Tier 1 international level, is really unacceptable. And that's what they've got to fix up. If they don't address how appalling their defence has been for 12 months, they'll get hockeyed again in every game. They actually scored some good tries last year. Their attack was passable, but their defence was just deplorable. When they played Ireland in Chicago, I'm not joking, I had to turn the TV off. I could not watch it. It was a joke. And they did that in the Six Nations last year. Their defence was simply unacceptable. And I find it really hard when guys stand there in the national anthem, they cry, they grab the national crest and they squeeze it and they carry on, then they don't tackle. I find that there's something wrong, and that's got to be addressed or they'll just get smashed.
Okay. Eddie, we don't have time to get into Scotland with you, but there's plenty of time over the next few weeks, obviously. Thanks a million. Enjoy it.
Monday Night Rugby on Off the Ball.